Okay, so let's talk about work-life balance. What does that even mean? I promise you that this is something that will absolutely change your life and make for the better. Let's talk about it. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is grab your calendar. And then now that you have it, I want you to open it. And the first thing that I want you to do is to write down somewhere in there the top 5 things that are important to you. Top 5. Obviously, there's going to be work is going to fall in there because it's something that has to be in your calendar, right? Family is going to be there because it has to be in your calendar. But I want you to think within that, what are those top 5 things? So my top 5 things are going to be God, my spouse, my family, my self-care, and my work. And it doesn't necessarily always go in that order. Now I will say that I separate, so between my spouse and my family, that is something that I feel I have to prioritize separately, just because the kids are gonna have certain needs and your spouse is gonna have certain needs. And so it's gotta be broken up and you've gotta make sure that you're spending time separated, Anyway, so from those 5 things, now I want you to, add a little dash or a little line arrow, however it is that you like to make notes and write things down. And I want you to write down, what does that stuff mean, right? So if God is in one of yours, that might be Bible study, that might be time that you get to actually just sit down and read your Bible, or time that you get to pray. It can be times that you go to church, so write down what are all those things that would fall under that category. And of course, your categories may be completely different than mine, and that's perfectly okay. And then for your spouse is gonna be like your date night, or just getting a chance to spend time, sit down together and talk at the end of the day. Or maybe you guys do an activity or something. So that's gonna be time that you do with your spouse. Then the kids is going to be things that you do with them, right? What the heck do they want to do? Who knows? It could be anything, but making sure that you're setting in time in your calendar for your family. And then work obviously is going to be work hours. It's going to take up a lot of time in your schedule, and you're probably going to get frustrated when you see it. It's probably a good thing, because maybe it'll help to rearrange some things and priorities, and it can be a really beautiful thing. And then of course, self-care. So self-care is taking a bath, reading a book, getting a massage, just having time to sit down. I can't tell you how often it happens that when I ask, because when I'm meeting with a potential client and going over their consultation, one of the things that I ask them is, what do you do to relax? And you would be surprised with how little people know how to relax. A lot of times the things that I see is sleep, which doesn't count because you're not there. So it can't possibly act as self-care if you're not actually there. Or TV, which again, TV is actually a stimulus. And so, and again, you're not there, you're not here. It's self-care. What are you doing for you? And that can be a multitude of things. Okay, now that you have those things, and again, your things may be different, so, take your time on that. You can always pause the video and can come back. Now, I want you to open your calendar, and I want you to fill in some gaps, because I know that there's gonna be some gaps in there of things that you're doing or not doing, right? So maybe go back to a previous week, one that you can scribble all over and you're not gonna care. And I want you to look at what's in there, but then also look at your gaps. So for instance, you may be somebody that likes to pray or listen to worship music, or maybe listen to an audiobook on your drive, right? So if you know that somewhere you have a long drive, let's say that your drive is to work and you have this 30-minute segment, what are you doing in that 30-minute segment? Are you spending time in worship or prayer? Then put that with the God category. If you're doing maybe a self-help book, or even just an enjoyable book, something that's for you, that would qualify as self-care, right? So we're gonna go through the calendar and we're gonna fill out those gaps and of what you were doing on the in-between times, right? On the things that you don't normally put in your calendar. So perhaps it's spending time with your spouse at the end of the night, write that in there. Or what you do for the family and making dinners. Maybe that's one of your things that goes under family. It's actually one of mine, is making dinners for the family, putting that in there. And so looking at what are all those things that make you feel good, that make you feel like a good mom, a good wife, a good disciple, all of that. And then of course, you've got to take care of yourself, because ladies, we cannot pour from an empty cup. You've got to take care of yourself. So looking at all of that. Now, fast forward. Now that you've done all of that and you've filled in those gaps, now take an abbreviation or number scale, or whatever it is that you do. Not number scale, but more like, on mine, when I'm checking my schedule, I do G for God, F for family, S for spouse. Super simple. If you're like a number person, you might put God is number 1, spouse is number 2, however you want to do it. So now you're looking at your calendar and you're going to put in, next to whatever it is that you have in your calendar, you're going to put in that number or letter. So basically, you're setting up, looking at what is that time slot for. Maybe you're a color person, and so you use different color highlighters, and your highlighters are going to be looking through it. So the goal with this is that you're going to look at where you're at, and now you have a way to look at your calendar and know, what am I doing? Where am I spending my time? And is it really where you want to be spending your time? So for instance, you may see that you're looking at your calendar, and obviously we know that there's going to be a certain number of hours that you have at work. We don't always get to have crazy amounts of self-care, but remember, we went back and we defined what are those things. So for instance, when I define mine, I think that I'm a good mom when I make at least 3 dinners throughout the week. So that doesn't mean that I have to cook every single night. So it kind of takes that pressure off, right? So for me, I feel like I'm a good mom if I at least make homemade meals for my family 3 times a week. And so if I've satisfied that, then okay, that's like a check mark that I've completed it, right? I want to make sure that I spend at least 1 hour for myself in self-care every week. And 1 hour is nothing, okay? 1 hour is nothing, but make sure, so exercise would fall under self-care, right? So, if you get 20 minutes every day that you have an opportunity to work out, then you're meeting that. But let's say that you're like, man, I feel like I don't take care of myself enough, and you need more time. Okay, so now let's say that you need 5 hours worth, and you're just you're giving yourself permission for where you spend your time, and then setting that in your schedule and figuring out, honestly, first of all, figuring out what that means, and then making a place for it in your schedule. So, with God, if you want to be spending at least 2 hours a week or 10 hours a week, whatever that looks like, okay, let's look at your calendar realistically and create a plan. Now, you do not have to do this every single week. This is literally just a game plan of how you can put it together, look at it, and then look at where you can make adjustments. And I promise you that if and when you do this, you'll not only be able to look at your calendar, you will also have so much more peace. You'll have peace about where you are, and you will find that crazy hardcore definition of work-life balance. I hope you guys find that helpful. I love using this method, and I hope you guys do too. Mwah. Bye.